Alright, we got our block cleaned up, got all our main journals polished, got all of the mating surfaces for the main journals polished down to metal. You don't want to gouge them or anything, but you want to clean them up to where they're shiny metal. You don't want to have a bunch of tarnish and old garbage oil. Same with the bearing caps, they're lined up. I got the crank over here, polished up, cleaned up, blown off. I got a set of main bearings and some plastic gauge and some assembly lube. We're going to put this together dry with the plastic gauge, check it, make sure everything's good, take it back apart, clean it back up again, and then put it together with some assembly lube. But I'll show you the process to do with the plastic gauge so you guys know how to do that. Okay, we went ahead and cleaned all our bearings off with brake cleaner to get all the slimy oil that they use to package them with. Make sure you get your tabs lined up and they're totally flush, okay? One of the center one will be a thrust, so we'll worry about the thrust later, but we want to check the clearances. Then you want to load the caps, and then when you set the crank in here, I mean, you want to be ever so careful. It's just to lightly set it in here because you don't want to nick these bearing surfaces. Okay, let me get the bearings loaded up in the caps and we'll get the bearing crank in there. Okay, crank's in. I got the bearing caps loaded. This crank is perfectly dry. Everything is dry. You want to make sure when you do this you don't put your plastic gauge next to an oil hole. You want to make sure you're away from an oil hole, so you can just kind of lightly turn your crank a little bit. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and lay a small piece of plastic gauge on every one of these journals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll get the caps on. Alright, there's a piece of plastic gauge. Okay, you do that on every one of them. Make sure your hands are as clean as possible. Put the bottom end together, torque down to specs, take it back apart, and then check them, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, there's one bearing cap off, and we're looking for 25 to 48. So you want to bring your stuff in. Okay, so it's a little bit skinnier than that one, and it's hard to tell on the camera, but it's probably the size of the white one, and the white one is 38. So we're within specs. Okay, that's on one. Now you do on all four, or all of them actually, you do every one of them just like that. And then you clean this stuff off with some brake cleaner. And then you lube it up if it's in good shape. And then you reassemble, and that's what we're going to do now. We're going to take them apart and check them. Every one of them. Okay, you grimy bastards. If you don't listen to anything I tell you, okay, and by the way, I am in no way responsible for you doing this and screwing your motor up, okay? But if you do anything, keep your grimy ass, dirty hands off these brand new bearings and this grease, okay? Nothing worse than putting your motor together and having the lint from the paper towel that you use to wipe your motor down with ruin it. I don't know how many I've seen. Guys spend all this money on their motor, they wipe their engine down with dollar store paper towel because they're just cheap. Okay? I mean, it's just, you're sticking all this money in this motor. Wash your hands, put some gloves on, everything. You don't want the doctor scratching his ass while he's operating on you, do you? And don't scratch yours while you're working on this motor. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we got the top side or bottom side lubed. We're going to set the crank in ever so delicately. Then we're going to lube the journals up on the caps and the thrust washers and put those in. And then we will slowly tighten everything down. Alright, I got the main caps set on, nothing's tight. But if you look at these notches here on the sides up there and down here, those are the thrust washers that are for the main. These are uber critical on a stick shift because you're putting a lot of lateral push and pressure on the back of the crank when you're stepping on the clutch. So these things are really, really critical. On an automatic, you still got to pay attention to them, but you can allow a little bit more sloppiness, I guess you'd say. But you don't want to. So now we're going to go and snug all the caps down. You got to watch those notches and make sure they don't pop out. I did put a little assembly grease on all the nuts, or on all the threads, and we're going to go snug them down. Alright, there's everything torqued down. Now what I did is I put lines on these. All the lines were going this way. 48 foot-pounds and then another 90 degrees, so I went from there to there on every bolt. Drew a line, goobered a bunch of paint on them so I could see. Okay, and this is a normal. That's perfect. Okay, that's all you need to know about that. And we'll go ahead and get this taped off. I want to get it cleaned up a little bit better and put a little paint on it, and then it'll be ready for pistons and rods and all the other seals and stuff. Okay, there's the block all painted up. Okay, crankshaft in it. Go in the house, get a plastic bag, cover it up, and we'll wait for more parts.